Hey everyone, this is your NCLEX review on sickle cell anemia. Sickle cell anemia is an autosomal recessive trait pattern, which means that you have to get it from both sets of parents in order to have it. So you usually see a picture where the mom has the gene and the father has the gene, and they pass it down to one of their kids. In the picture, there's always 4 children, and one of them has the sickle cell anemia. And that's because there is a 1 in 4 chance, or 25% chance, that you will have sickle cell anemia if both of your parents carry the trait. So what's the problem? Well, we can look at the name to determine what kind of problems that we will have to know for NCLEX. So the name, sickle cell anemia. Let's start with the first part. The sickle cell. So the red blood cell will have an abnormal shape and it will look like this. So that means that it is more prone to clumping together in the vessels. Alright? That's one problem that we definitely have to look out for. And we'll talk about that later. The second thing you need to know is that the patient will be anemic, hence the name sickle cell anemia. And that's because a normal red blood cell has a lifespan of up to 120 days, whereas a sickle cell only has a lifespan of up to 20 days. So you'll see that the patient will be anemic because the red blood cells are constantly dying and the body has to make more. On the lab value, you will notice that the reticulocyte count of a person with sickle cell anemia will be elevated because of the short lifespan of their red blood cells. I know that's a lot, but basically the reticulocyte count is important in sickle cell anemia, right? So the term you need to know is sickle cell crisis, all right? And that's when your patient gets into trouble because their blood is now really thick and clumped together, all right? And that will cause a lot of problems for your patient really fast. Number 1, all right, is that your patient will be in severe pain. This is a very painful problem. Number 2, the body's not getting the oxygen it needs, so the patient will have poor capillary refill, okay? They will complain of shortness of breath. They will be cyanotic or blue. All right, you'll be able to see that. Also, because the blood is clumping together and not moving, that puts your patient at risk for pressure ulcers. Number 1, we have to figure out what are the causes. The main causes for sickle cell crisis are going to be hypoxia, okay, and dehydration. Hypoxia and dehydration. So our treatment will focus on correcting those issues as well as taking care of that pain that I talked about. Well, it's so painful because the blood is clumping together again and it's basically killing the tissues. It's leading to necrosis of the tissues. That will cause the pain. Very simple. We're going to hydrate with IV fluid. We're going to encourage them to drink PO fluid. We're going to give oxygen via nasal cannula. Right? We're going to give pain medications for the pain to help them relax. You may also need to transfuse with blood. So you may also need to give blood on top of all those other things that you've done because the patient will be anemic. Should I put the oxygen on? Is that my number 1 priority? Or should I start the IV fluids? You need to give the IV fluids first, okay? That's the priority because you have to think about the problem. The problem is that the blood is too thick now. It's clumped together. Also, we give the IV fluids first to help thin that blood out. That's the priority when it comes to NCLEX, okay? One more thing. I told you that one of the treatments for sickle cell anemia crisis would be to give blood. I want to talk to you really quickly about what you need to know for NCLEX before you give blood. Number one, you always want to make sure you have a written consent before you start blood. All right? Make sure that the doctor has gone over the advantages and disadvantages for your patient before you do that. Number two, okay, make sure that you check the vital signs before you give blood. The patient's temperature should not be elevated. Okay, they should have no signs of fever or infection. You have to make sure that you have the appropriate equipment. Okay, you have to make sure you have the proper tubing with the filter on it. You have the appropriate size IV before you start blood. Okay, the IV has to be at least 18 gauge for NCLEX. More things, I don't think it's the second thing. More things is that you have to stay with the patient for the first 15 minutes after you give blood, okay, to make sure that they don't have any reaction signs, any back pain, any complaining of itching or hives or any kind of allergic reaction to the blood. Laboratory value you have to get is a type and cross, and that's just to make sure that you have the appropriate blood for the patient, because you don't want to give an incompatible blood product to your patient as well. That is a quick rundown of sickle cell anemia. I did a blog post about it, so you can always go to the Read My Review blog if you want the actual script to what I just said. And I look forward to giving you some more information in the future.